Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be discussing undulating versus linear periodization. So firstly, let's start by discussing what undulating and linear periodization are. So linear periodization is a protocol in which you're decreasing volume but increasing intensity over time. So the nearer you get to the competition, the lower the volume and the higher the weight on the bar. In undulating periodization, the intensity and volume waving up and down per session. So say one session might be high intensity, low volume, so you'd use a higher weight on the bar for fewer reps. And then another session might be high volume and a low weight on the bar. So with linear periodization, basically further out from competition, there's more of an emphasis on hypertrophy and less on maximal strength. And as you get closer, the emphasis is more on maximal strength. Whereas in an undulating periodization, you kind of try to train both qualities at once. So one session you're focusing on hypertrophy, and the next might be a maximal strength session, and then somewhere in between. So basically the volume and intensity are waving up and down constantly all the time in undulating, whereas in linear it's a straight line with an end goal in sight. So basically linear periodization works really well for peaking for an event. So say if you want to peak performance for an event for a specific powerlifting meet, for example, it's really good for that. However, undulating periodization, I would argue, is better for a long-term continual development. So say a year-to-year plan on undulating periodization, you're not going to lose the qualities of hypertrophy near a competition, and you're not going to further out. You're not going to be so far off strength that you're not really creating any relevant response that's going to actually improve your maximal strength and competition performance. The main strength of a linear periodization is basically the focus and shift of general preparation to specific preparation with the eye of peaking in a competition. That's the main strength, but it's also the weakness. As far out from the competition, you're not necessarily training on things that are specific to what you're actually trying to achieve. However, in undulating periodization, undulating periodization is basically the opposite. So you're trying to train multiple characteristics at once, but not in the same session. So from session to session, you're trying to have different focuses. So you're kind of trying to train multiple characteristics throughout the year, and not shifting from one block to the next, one phase to the next of slowly decreasing volume and increasing intensity. So you kind of the benefit of training session to session is in that time period you're not adapting to it. So say in the linear model, your training is changing throughout a long period of time. It gives you a slow time to adapt to it. Whereas in undulating periodization, it adds more variation to your training. So basically, from one session creates a hypertrophy stimulus, the next one might be a strength stimulus, the next hypertrophy, and vice versa. So you got different emphases on each session, and basically it prevents your body to adapting to one type of stimulus. So say one session, your body's response might be to increasing muscle mass from the hypertrophy, and the next session might be strength. So it's adding variation to your training. I'm not saying adding too much variation is a good thing. Some people program hop all the time, add loads of variation in. That's not the kind of variation I'm talking about. I'm talking about specific movement variations. The variation needs to be specific to your goal of what you're trying to achieve. So there's no point just throwing in random stuff saying it's trying to confuse the muscle, whatever that's supposed to mean. That's completely pointless. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the change in stimulus from session to session kind of causes different adaptation. It stops your body from basically getting used to it and stopping adapting. So that's the benefit of undulating periodization. However, the benefit of undulating periodization is also the drawback. So say at a specific period in time, you're not focusing on one characteristic. You're focusing on multiple characteristics at once, and that could possibly result in less gains in one specific characteristic. So for example, if you're trying to gain maximum strength peaking for a competition, undulating periodization is probably not the best idea. because you're basically wasting your energy training for hypertrophy when all you need is the max strength. However, throughout the year, you're more likely to maintain your strength. So say if you're using a linear model, you finish your strength, you finish the end of your block and you compete, and you start again, and you're back on like strength, like you're back on high volume, low intensity. So you're likely to possibly lose some of your strength, some of your ability to display maximal strength. And likewise, as the volume decreases and the intensity increases, it's possible you could lose some hypertrophy. So you're kind of like yo-yoing all the time in a linear model, whereas in an undulating model, you're yo-yoing session to session. However, on a yearly model, it's a more consistent, steady progress. But however, just because we're discussing these two models, it doesn't mean you have to use two different. You have to use different models throughout the year. So, say for example, you could use undulating periodization in between competition periods, and then pre-competition, so like the last 6 to 8 weeks before you train your competition, you could switch to a linear and progress linearly into your competition. Basically, there are many different programs which employ these types of periodization. So your basic example of an undulating model would be like Jim Wendler's 5-3-1. So basically, one session you focus on 5s, then 3s, then 1s. So you're trying to increase strength over multiple rep ranges at one time, and from session to session there's a different emphasis. An example of a linear periodization model would be some of like the Ed Cohen programs, like the Ed Cohen deadlift program, where you're moving from like high reps, far out from the competition, into low reps in. So from them example, it's also important to note that one periodization model is not necessarily good for one type. So like some people would recommend linear periodization for beginners, then more advanced forms of periodization like undulating or concurrent for more intermediate and advanced lifters. However, some advanced lifters have still got very good success out of just basic linear periodization. That's all for today, guys. If there's any questions on this video, please don't hesitate to ask. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Peace out.